he just helped me. It's
Was
fine.
it good?
Yeah.
There's a plug and it's actually right here. Sometimes that gets unplugged there by your.
Okay.
We're good.
Is that where it should be? Yeah. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'll call tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting to order. It is 6:05. All 9 members are here. We have a quorum. I guess it's a regular meeting. We're taking a roll call.
Davis.
Here.
Lampy. Berg. Bartz. Blanky. Smith. Arnett. Wetzel. Moldenhauer.
Okay, thank you. Our only agenda item tonight is under business. TID-TIF presentation for 1911 Gateway Drive from Freehill Capital.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Max Schubley, a partner at Freehill Capital. We are a Midwest-based real estate developer and real estate investment company. We're asked by some people to kind of come in and go through the tax increment financing process, what it entails, kind of how cities have used it throughout Wisconsin and other municipalities, and largely in general. So like I said, we're Midwest focused. Between us and National Management, we currently have around 3,500 apartment units that we've developed and or manage. If you're familiar at all with the residential development in Johnson Creek, National Management is currently bringing 128 units of multifamily development through phase 1, that's called the Ponds, that's finishing up right about now, and phase 2 is set to break ground in the coming months. That's another 176 units of multifamily development down in Johnson Creek. We're long-term owners and focus on durable communities and want to stay in Watertown for the long haul here. We have a track record of partnering with local municipalities. We recently developed and are currently developing a 16-story high-rise down in Kansas City. That's a historic adaptive reuse project with significant public-private partnership in order to make that project feasible and get it to a finish point. So while we're here tonight, the challenge cities face is, growth does not equal automatic housing delivery. There's rising construction costs across all jobs. The infrastructure and service demands increase before the tax base does in many cases, and housing doesn't often pencil without partnership. And today's goal is really for us to show how TIF can bridge this gap without burdening its existing taxpayers. And why we chose Watertown in general is Hunter and I are both from Wisconsin. We both went through the Wisconsin real estate program. We're very familiar with the I-94 corridor, now kind of what they're calling the Madwaukee corridor, and all of the growth drivers as far as manufacturing that's happening in Jefferson County, but yet seeing kind of a lack of housing following that manufacturing growth, given there's only been 426 rental units delivered in the last 15 years with a 1% apartment vacancy rate, indicating that there's a strong need and demand for housing, and that demand has largely been unmet, and a lot of these facts and figures have been pulled from Tracy Cross market studies. What is tax increment financing? Simply, it's a TIF district that captures new property tax revenue created by development. The existing tax base continues flowing to current taxing jurisdictions, and the increment is reinvested locally to enable projects that otherwise wouldn't happen, and that's a key to how tax increment financing works. And with working with people like Vanderwals and Associates and them going through rigorous underwriting processes, in large it's used as a catalyst, not as a subsidy for without it, the development would not happen, and that's kind of what they call the but-for test, kind of as we can see as we go on here. So the stages of tax increment financing, you have the creation, and then you typically have a time period, a duration where that tax increment financing works, where the rebates are given back to the project in a form where that supports feasibility because early on, during the lease-up timeline of housing, and the early stages and early years of a project, when there's no incoming cash flow, it makes it very largely unfeasible and unfinanceable. And then, after a certain amount of period or time that goes on, that TIF would terminate and expire, and then the full tax base would then flow to the municipality at that increased assessment value once the building is built and stabilized over a period of time. So how TIF is a win-win public-private tool for the city, brings new housing supply, brings new residents, workforce retention, and taxpayers. It's an infrastructure investment funded by future growth, and it's higher long-term assessed value over time, again, with things that wouldn't otherwise get built without it. For the developer, it helps lower operating costs during early years, increasing our ability to stay in Watertown owning the project. It gives us the ability to finance and build at today's costs, given that we largely would not be able to finance it if it weren't for out TIF. And it also allows us to deliver a quality project instead of cutting corners and really diving in there. And then again, for both, but for the proposed TIF, the project would not proceed due to the insufficient financial feasibility, and that is largely driven by heightened costs, insurance rates that never seem to stop going up. Wish that was not the case, but and the inability to achieve market-supported returns without that public participation. And again, largely, municipalities, and Hunter will dive into it in a little bit here of how it's successfully been used throughout Wisconsin, but they're really seeing it, and we're seeing it as a catalyst to spur growth and not necessarily a subsidy, given that a lot of these developments that have been happening throughout Wisconsin and throughout the country are largely due to what's happening with TIF here. And what happens without TIF? Like I've mentioned, minimal to zero development in today's economic environment. And I'll leave it to Hunter to kind of go through more success stories in Wisconsin and the Midwest.
Yep, if you can go to the next slide. One more, Deb. So basically, and I don't know if many of you guys know, but Wisconsin is a huge driver of TIF and TIF districts in the United States. So right now, as it sits, TIF has been around for, in some capacity, 50 years around the state of Wisconsin. Right now, there's over 1,400 active TIF districts in this state. All of this information is kind of based back into why, in regards to Wisconsin, these programs have, in specific, been very exceptional and produced a lot of growth through other municipalities. And they have very low distress rates. Of those 1,400 TIF districts throughout the state, there's only about 73 of them that are actually in this form of distress. So it's a very kind of a lower risk profile project. On average, these TIF districts in 2025, so this is just last year, added about $1.2 million to the tax base per year since their creation. And their average lifespans in Wisconsin were about 16.3 years, which, if you know anything about TIF, usually they're on like a 20 or 27-year timeline. So that actually means that these districts closed earlier, meaning there was a strong return on investment for those municipalities, and they were able to kind of sunset them prior to what they anticipated. In regards to some more specific projects for TIF and TID in Wisconsin, a lot of the other growing communities in this state are utilizing these types of programs. So downtown Milwaukee at 100 East Wisconsin, I'm sure if you've been in Milwaukee, you can kind of remember this project downtown. They did a $14.4 million TIF package for that project in the bottom left corner there, of a conversion of a blighted old office building that without this TIF package would have been a blighted old office building for some, I would imagine, sizable time to continue. But because of the package that they implemented, they're able to revitalize the building, bring it back to life as a new growth portion for that downtown corridor. In Oak Creek, Drexel Town Square, they're creating a huge kind of TIF project, TIF district there with a former industrial site that because of the package they put in place, they created a whole new vibrant hub with retail, residential, and municipal buildings all in a cool corridor down there. Again, something that would never really penciled or been feasible without a great public-private partnership to be the catalyst in creating that sort of development. And Wauwatosa as well, they approved a $34 million TIF district to spur the development of 3 multifamily projects within the Milwaukee County Research Park. So Wauwatosa, another place that I think is very much like Watertown in size, and what they're doing there is utilizing these programs in a proficient way. Waukesha as well with their new TID 30 residential project. So there's a long-standing vacant plot of land. If you've been on to Waukesha, you probably know what I'm talking about. And they are doing a large-scale project for this vacant parcel of land so that they can achieve 114 market rate units to bring much-needed housing to the area, increase supply, and by theory, obviously decreasing other housing prices and rental rates around because they're able to take this land that never would have been anything and being able to build something with a great public-private partnership on that parcel. Now we want to talk a little bit more specifically into the parcel that we ended up purchasing in December. So as you guys know, 1911 Gateway Drive, we have 2 maps up here. One is a zoning map, one is just a normal aerial overlay. This area in itself has actually already benefited extensively from previous TID districts. So I believe it was TID 3 that was one of the catalysts here that was able to kind of spur the growth of Walmart, you have Tractor Supply, RVs, your single mattress, you have pro healthcare, you have all these different areas of town and this growth corridor that was able in a lot of ways to be financially feasible because of some of the TIF district and some of the projects that have been done down in that area. We see this area as another really growing place of Watertown and one that potentially could be a great fit for another TIF district. There's multiple other heavy industrial sites up on the north corridor here, past our Airport Drive, as well down here off of Gateway. There's multiple parcels, as you can see it better over here, that also could utilize from a potential district that would be anchored into a form of residential development on our site that we're looking to potentially do. This section of town too is starting to get more traction with great projects like the pathway and walkway and bikeway that's coming from Quick Trip all the way down to Walmart. There's going to be more foot traffic. There's going to be more people. You have Bear's Coffee Roasters up there as well. They have a coffee shop right there that, talking to the owner there, they don't get a ton of walk-ins, right? Because there's not a ton of housing development that's been going on down here. And we can really see that it benefiting from another, 7, 8, 900 people potentially living there with what we're looking to do. Our initial project overview on the site on 1911 Gateway Drive. So it's a 33-acre site. Right now, our preliminary plans are looking at between 250 to 290 units. Obviously, we're early here in the stages, and there's still a lot to be discussed with planning and zoning, and working with Brian especially on kind of some of the, I guess, challenges this site has, but looking on how we can kind of create a great project there. But our initial goal here is, one, quality middle market housing, something that is really missing in America. And today, you go to places like Madison or downtown Milwaukee, people are building apartments, right? But you have places like the Couture, or you have places like the Adria and Madison that are places that are great luxury housing, great options, but it's very, very expensive. So we're looking to create that kind of perfect middle market spot where we can provide quality housing at a price that makes sense and is not something that's going to break people's banks. We want people that can live here that are going to be, your kid who just graduated high school, he's working as an apprentice and as an electrician, something like that. He wants an affordable 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit that isn't going to kill him on the bank at the end of the month, but it's still a quality place to live. It's not some old rundown place that he's going to have real problems being at, all the way up to your larger 3-bed, 2-bath units that are all private entry, attached garages that you got a younger family with, maybe they have 1 kid and they're going to be living there for 3, 4, 5 years, maybe have 1 or 2 more kids, and they can grow into the space. So a section that We have availability from 1-bed, 1 bath, 2-bed, 2 baths, all the way up to 3-bed, 2 baths to hopefully kind of capture a huge market share of people and provide for what all they're looking for. So within these units, attached indoor parking, large bedroom floor plans. Majority of the units will have private entry in our initial plans from what we're looking at. Hard surface countertops, in-unit washer and dryers, stainless steel appliances, an amenitized clubhouse that has things such as potentially a fitness center, pickleball court, sport courts, grill station, gazebo stations, as well as a clubhouse area for people to hang out in. We want this thing to be a neighborhood feel. We want it to attract people. We want people to be excited about living here and excited that they can actually come to a place and grow with it as they grow in life, right? Like I was talking about that younger kid who maybe gets married, all of a sudden kids start showing up, but he likes it so much he wants to hang out there for a while because it's a reasonable place to live from a price point, and he's getting quality housing at the same time. So we also want to implement some walking trails potentially. There's some wetlands to the eastern side of this parcel that we think are actually in a really cool amenity because we have ponds, we have really cool foliage that we want to kind of accentuate with the potential development, putting some sort of walking trail back there, having views from some of the complexes of those wetlands so that people can look at it as kind of a naturescape. And if it's going to be there, nobody can really build on wetlands anyway, so we want to make sure that we can use it to our advantage and add to that neighborhood feel of the parcel. And here's our kind of preliminary site plans and layouts. Again, these are super early, really subject to change. We're very excited to go through the process with the city and kind of figure out some of the kinks and work with planning, work with zoning, and make sure this is something that makes sense for the community and that people truly want. But right now we're kind of thinking about multi-building layout where we have buildings that are everywhere from 8 units, 12 units, all the way up on the larger side, potentially 24 to 30 units depending on what we're going to look at doing. Again, varying unit ranges throughout, but you can see here tucked under garages, balconies, and we still want to make sure, even though it's not super luxury, crazy, high price point, that this is a very attractive building. It's a quality building, and it's built well, and it's going to look great when it's done. On the site here too, clubhouse, some retention ponds, and then varying layout of the buildings and some of the streets. On this site, there is a lot of horizontal work. This was a farm, so there is definitely, as we're kind of starting to clear cut the site, look at what's available, do soil testing. Obviously, this plan is going to change probably significantly as we work through it all, but wanted to share with you guys what we could at this point. Some of the potential community benefits to Watertown, and I think Max touched upon this. I touched on it about a little bit within our discussion as well, but 250 to 290 potential new homes for the local workforce here that would not be built otherwise. It will help support employers along the I-94 and Madwacky corridor. As we've had all this growth in this area, announcement from Kikkoman, Klon Bio, all these different places, right? As they're expanding and more businesses are looking at this corridor for potentially doing headquarters, expanding more, one of the huge factors that limits areas like this is that they don't have ample quality housing for the local workforce base to live in. So if you have more companies looking, one of the main aspects they're going to look at is, when's the last time a development's been done here? Where, if I have 100 workers that are going to have to be working at my manufacturing facility, where are these people probably going to live? And they're going to be vetting and kind of looking for what's the most viable positioning for our business so that we can support all of our workforce that are going to be living and working here too. It also creates a permanent tax base post-TIF. Obviously, a development of this nature, especially in a TIF district format, if that were to happen, with other sites being utilized as well, we can help amplify the growth of this corridor, amplify that southern portion of Watertown down by I-94. There's already a ton of development up 26 with a lot of the QSR restaurants. You've got construction up there too. There's a lot going on down there, and we think this project could be a great way to help amplify all the things there that are great and kind of take it to a new potential level. During the TIF period too, there's, increment is reinvested locally. There's no impact to existing taxpayers. And after the TIF expiration, as we said, all the fully assessed value flows to the city, county schools, and the development remains maintained and occupied, and is truly, it goes back to, we view it as a package that is a catalyst for growth, not a subsidy, where we would love to be a part of that catalyst to growing this section of town. Max, you want to jump into some of the alignment and risk?
And then just as we kind of are diving through more of the mechanics and like how can a city look at how a TIF or a TID is aligned with developers, and just some risk mitigants from the city's perspective. The land on our end was acquired in all cash. We have favorable zoning in place. The experienced developer with internal funding, with local expertise and knowledge, giving the developments in Johnson Creek a repeat partnership with National Management. This will be our third deal with them this year alone. And then proven building designs and contractors as we are vetting them out, and in a structural way where we win only if the city wins, where TIF is not necessarily a giveaway. It's a performance-based partnership through a development agreement that is actively tied to housing delivery, and it strengthens the tax base, supports economic growth, and positions the city for the long haul. And we appreciate the city coming out here to listen to our TIF presentation, as well as a very high level intro to the project, kind of as we work out all the kinks, as Hunter said. But we look forward to pursuing this and seeing what we can get done in Watertown, and be here for the decades to come. And then along with this, in the presentation, we've just included a lot of the supporting links and information that we kind of went through, if you're curious to look into it further.
With that said, we'd love to open up the floor to some initial questions and answer what we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Max and Hunter. Maybe open for questions this side first.
So thanks for your presentation and for being here tonight. I'm looking at your company's website, Freehill Capital, is that the right one, .com?
Yeah.
Is that yours? And I'm looking at your portfolio page, and it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4 projects listed there. Is that accurate? That you've been involved in 4 projects as a company, or are there others?
On the
Yeah,
Freehill side.
on the
yes.
Freehill side, that's correct. And then the National Management side, they have been in the apartment business for better 30 years.
Right, so I was specifically speaking to the Freehill side. And then of those 4 projects, how many of them were built from the ground up? It looks like several of them possibly were refurbishing?
Yes, so the Aladdin is the adaptive reuse project. The development project, the other buildings were existing acquisitions.
So were any of them built from the ground up?
No.
And so have you been involved in a project that's been built from the ground up as Freehill Capital?
Not as Freehill Capital, no.
Okay, thank you.
In both of our previous jobs we have, so I used to work for National Management as well. They've done a bunch of ground up actually lately, and then also with Northern Management who built Rock Creek, who's also actually was from Duquesne Development as well. Some of the projects up in Sheboygan, and then Max worked for J. Jeffers & Co. in downtown Milwaukee, doing also massive master plan historic tax credit projects as well.
But this is a co-development with National Management. They have a major stake in this, and they will be managing the project when it's built.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about the development in Johnson Creek. Can you tell us what the investment was there and who is the developer?
The developer on that is National Management. The very rough estimate is net somewhere around $50 million total.
Okay. Mr. Wetzel, go ahead.
You said Johnson Creek. Where in Johnson Creek is this?
Right across from Rob's Performance, and then as well as, do you know where? Exactly like.
It's on the, if you're driving down the highway there and you're looking to the east, right past the intersection there, they're on the
County
corner.
B, okay.
Yeah, they're on the corner there, those newer, all those 8 families, that's the Ponds development. And then Shadow Ridge is the parcel just south of that. That's the one they're about to enter into and begin development on. So there's already, if you go drive through the ponds right now, I wanna say it's a little bit over, I think it's about 60%, 55-ish% right now. Buildings are completed, people are living in them. And then the remaining buildings are currently being completed in various stages as they're doing kind of a rolling style development.
Mr. Mayor, one
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Wetzel, yes.
picture. Says co-founder and co-founder. Are you the top?
Correct. Of Free Heel, correct, yes.
Very good.
Yeah, and then we have a third partner as well, Ben Gordon, but he couldn't make it here today.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Arnett, go ahead.
So first, let's echo, thank you for coming here tonight, and go the next step and say, you've bought the property, so thank you for that investment in the community. And I sincerely hope that we will be able to find a mutual understanding of an approach to this project. So, and to that end, I think what will be most helpful for me in working toward that partnership is working with facts and specifics. And if we could avoid generalizations and or exaggerations, I would sincerely appreciate it. I want to share with you some perspectives I have on TID based on my 30-plus years in the business, that business being representing citizens and taxpayers. So my perspective is that TID was initially primarily created to facilitate industrial and commercial development. That was its highest priority. But I recognize, particularly over the last 10 years, that it has been used in multifamily development. What I've generally observed overall, across watching many specific deals, is a shift in the standards applied to TID. The but-for clause appears to be given lip service in many cases. It's basically, well, because we need it. And I don't see numbers presented. Consistently seen cases where numbers not presented, or numbers that are wildly exaggerated. So if we could avoid that kind of thing in a situation, I think we can find our way to, again, a mutually beneficial partnership in a ready manner. From a city government perspective, I think the challenge that a city government has in looking at residential supported by TID is that the per capita service costs for new residents are significantly higher than for, say, industrial development. You know, for us, as an example, out on the west side, we've got Clausen. I was here when we brought them on board. They are fantastic resident business. Their per capita consumption of services beyond utilities is really, 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 really small. And again, if you take the average costs for consumption of city services, you know, again, outside of utilities, so fire, police, parks, etc., all those services, they are higher for residents than they are for a commercial or industrial user. And so when we forsake that tax increment for residential development because of the way that city finances are structured in most communities in Wisconsin. When we forsake that tax increment, we are giving the one largest source of revenue we have to pay for that increased consumption of services. So we bring a bunch of new residents in that consume these services, but we don't bring any revenue in to pay for that increased use in services. And that's a challenge. And in that regard, at the most extreme level where the increment is all given away, it can impact the local taxpayer because they're going to be asked to pay for that increased use of services from those new residents until the TID expires, which you showed average can be 16 years, but is anywhere from 20 to 26 is the standard initial. Remind you, a generation is 20 to 30, so talking a generation of taxpayer. So again, sharing some perspective, sharing what I see as the challenge around that. I present that as a challenge and not as a brick wall obstacle. I think there are alternatives beyond TID where a city can work in partnership with the developer on this type of project, whether that's looking at perhaps I'll call it oversizing infrastructure for this development that then the city could use for that area, so that becomes a valuable asset to the city. And stormwater retention would be a classic example of that. But another example of that would be that wetland area. There may be opportunities there for the city to recover credits from a state perspective that, again, have monetary value that could help toward this project. I think there's also instances where we can help from a zoning perspective and possibly make it possible to get in more units into the same amount of space, which helps the financials over the long term. So these are all examples of how I think we can work toward the beneficial partnership that doesn't cross that line into the realm of subsidy and giveaway, which frankly I've seen a lot of. But it doesn't have to go there. And I think we can find a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnett. Anybody have any? Mr. Lampe, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. A lot of us probably are thinking back to that committee of the whole that we had on September 3rd of 2024, where we sat down as a council and talked through what we would or would not support generally in terms of a TID-TIF environment, which included, at the time, pretty much an all the above approach, including industrial, commercial, and certainly in this particular case, housing. We also, I hope one of the things that remains a constant through our economic development is, previous statement from our last guy sitting here, Mason Becker, where he said, regarding a similar approach that came through, it's unlikely any substantial multifamily housing development will be feasible in Watertown right now without some level of public assistance, given the current high construction costs and interest rates. So this is one of those projects where it looks like TID-TIF is going to be a no-brainer. We're just basically going to have to talk about how much we're comfortable with. As a council, as a city, we've already put it out there that we're comfortable with some level of housing support. I think that you can look around various areas and determine what essentially the market is providing for TID-TIF incentives. And while people who have been in government forever may not like where that percentage is in terms of amount that heads off to the developer, people may not necessarily like the total amount of TID-TIF that's being allocated to housing across the state, frankly, right now. That is the reality. And I continue to be probably the biggest voice for rapid growth within Watertown. This is a development that by itself could potentially increase the size of the city anywhere between 2 to 3%. And this also fills one of those gaps that we continue to hear a lot of requests for from the major employers in town. And many studies bear that out. the sort of Bible of housing right now is that cross study that's referenced by the developers in front of us today. It's available right off of the Thrive ED site. Just look it up, the Jefferson County Residential Market Analysis. It contains things like what is the current rental rate? Where do you get numbers like saying that there's only a 1% vacancy in that thing? It provides the science, the data behind why communities are incentivizing, strongly incentivizing housing in this region. So all in all, I'm a huge fan of this. I think the initial outline that's provided in this proposal appears to be along the lines of a PAYGO proposal, which is something that the city has been able to implement in a couple of other developments with a large amount of success, and I really hope that this development adds to our multifamily housing here in Watertown.
Thank you, Mr. Lampy. You else have any questions? Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Yeah, just a few comments. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus this evening on the financial side of this concept, this approach for developing a huge housing complex. And I think that's something that is obviously very important. As a matter of fact, it's foundationally important, both to the developers that are making presentation here this evening, as well as to the city from a huge number of perspectives. But what I would like to emphasize is I do not know how many times we have had different presentations or discussions relating to the need for housing in this broader area. Here we have a proposal which is going to provide a minimum of 250 living units, which is going to be a huge impetus for attracting all sorts of beneficial additional development, adding residents to our community, workforce incentives for other companies to come in and develop. But the point that I would like to just draw our attention to for a moment is, if you were to envision the opportunity to bring to pass a development of this quality with 250 upward living units, where in the city of Watertown could you possibly envision it being sited that would be more beneficial than where this site is being proposed? It is the perfect follow-on to TID 3. I mean, if you can think back to before TID, we had a downsized Walmart, we had an infrastructure concept, and we had huge amounts of vacant land out in this very area. The TID that underwrote that development, which is retired now and which is producing hundreds of thousands of dollars of revenue for all of the different jurisdictions, what we have is we have one business after another. And while a lot of the graphics that we saw this evening showed the developments in and around the expanded Walmart and Bears Brothers and Pro Health and so forth, and there were some presentations, some depictions of areas that were already broken down into different lots, unsold, different zoning classifications, and so forth. But the TID that actually has existed for all of those years, producing all of those benefits, runs all the way east to the county highway. And the infrastructure is in, and the jobs are there. I mean, what used to be Wisconsin Furniture is now Fisher Barton and Symbol Mattress and all of the smaller businesses as you head east. I mean, we're talking about a huge, successful TID project, but so much is still incomplete. In other words, huge numbers of industrial and commercial lots that are just sitting there waiting for development. And we're talking about an ideal location for this huge residential housing area. I mean, just think back to the conversations we had about the Allward Street housing project. Admittedly, a lot of potential housing units, but in the absolute worst possible place. Here we have more housing units, which could have a symbiotic influence on all of the associated areas and the potential development that will come. But well beyond that, we have got a location that is absolutely ideal for what is being proposed here. So what I am so thankful for is to hear this type of vision being presented. And admittedly, there is a lot that needs to be discussed. And certainly the financial component is tremendously important. I'm sure that we're going to be able to find a way that we can partner together that makes it financially attractive for all of us. But my commendation tonight is that we have got a project that is going to fulfill probably the greatest singular need that we have, which is for huge amounts of additional housing stock for the city in the absolute perfect location with the opportunity to influence development all around it of exactly the same type of development that was all part of TID 3 as it was in its early development years. So we have got a very, very bright future that is on the edge of becoming reality. We just need to buy into this vision, recognize all the associated pluses, and work together in the kind of partnership that a lot of cities find it difficult to do. But Watertown has a history of doing it. And I believe that we are going to be very, very thankful as this project moves forward and we see it come to fruition and accrue the benefits that are going to be huge for our city's future.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Blanky first.
So I'll be brief because a lot of my sentiments already been expressed by Alder Lampy and Alder Smith. I think this is a good project. One of the words that I've heard used to describe Watertown over the last few years is stagnation or stagnant. And a lot of that is due to a lack of housing development. Plan Commission recently discussed smaller development in this area on Gateway Drive. That's tiny in compared to this. That's not something that can really push it. And the way I see this development is, much as Alder Smith said, a catalyst. This is something that a lot of these underutilized locations along Air Park Drive, we could suddenly see development there. I mean, we haven't really seen much development on that end of town around Walmart, and this is a plot of land that could really push that forward. This is something that went back all the way to Huron Landing about 15 years ago when there was a major plan for it right before the housing crash. So this isn't a new idea. I understand the challenges of TIF, that we need to strike the right balance to get to the point, but I think that this is the type of project where we would take a very serious look at it. And from just one other perspective of zoning in that, this is already zoned and ready for this type of development. It's, looking at the map, I believe it is zoned as multifamily already. Yes. So from that aspect, that's things that we're not going to have to put the extra work in on this end there, so that this project can kind of hit the ground running.
Thank you, Mr. Blanky. Mr. Lampe, it's something?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to put a bow and recognize some of the comments my colleagues have made. If there are potential zoning gaps, if there are opportunities for our stormwater group to work with the DNR or whatnot on some of those opportunities that Alder Arnett mentioned, if there are gaps in infrastructure, sewerage, or anything else out there, I guess I would ask that we surface those as soon as possible to make sure that we aren't looking at impediments, or that we have more opportunities to put on the table as soon as possible.
Okay, I know Marine and Engineering have been looking at that already.
Great, thank you.
And actually, Marine's online.
I'm not going to put anybody on the spot.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Mr. Mollenhauer, yes.
Mayor, I would agree that I think that's a perfect location out there for that particular building process, because we already have buildings out on that end of town, and this would fit right in with what we have already out there on that end. And that Allward Street was mentioned before, and that was not a very good location. I went along with it at that time too. That was not a good location to put buildings as multifamily. But this particular thing, I think it's a good deal.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mollenhauer. Okay. All right, Max and Hunter, thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to add at all before we close?
I think we're just looking forward to working with the city, working with all the municipalities, going through the planning and zoning steps, and we're about as transparent group as you can find, so we're excited to kind of work towards a great development that we think can make this entire town grow and help make Wisconsin grow, because we love the state more than anything, so.
Okay. All right. Thank you for coming. Okay, that being the last item on the agenda, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion by Wetzel. I'll take a second by Lampe then. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. You can take about a 7-8 minute break here.